Hello, my name is Alan Cowley, and this is the video version of the first of three articles I'm writing about the importance of parental participation. In these videos, I will talk about the need for a wider recognition of the important role that parents could play in their children's learning through the introduction of a national strategy for parental participation. I'll be exploring the independent academic research and school-based evidence of how a strong but positive strategy is being used to improve relationships with parents and enable parents from all backgrounds to support their children's learning. All school leaders are familiar with the statistic of 100,000 pupils missing from our nation's schools. But fewer will be aware about the increase of 28,750 pupils whose parents have opted for elective home education, known as homeschooling. For that, have a look at Out of Sight, Out of Mind, a report from the Centre for Social Justice in November 2022. Or indeed, the 10,672 increase in pupils who have moved into the independent sector from the state sector since the start of the pandemic. These figures suggest a wider context to a problem that is often seen as impacting a narrower section of our community. To allow readers to digest the content, I'm writing this article in three parts. Each part will feature a different element that needs to be considered by schools. And for those of you who prefer to listen to content, I'm publishing a link to this video to help you with that as well. I will also be referencing significant pieces of research that you may not be aware of, each of which can have a direct positive impact on the issue by shaping our understanding of reality as it exists for others, an important step in recognizing a solution. The research shares insights from a medical point of view, submitted as evidence for the COVID inquiry by 8 leading academics from some of our greatest universities, looking at the impact of COVID policy on children and schools. In order to respect the copyright issues, I provided an official link to this submission by the BMJ, the British Medical Journal, that at the time of writing, which was the 6th of April 2023, is openly available online. I use my own unconnected examples within this article to illustrate the wider impact of COVID-19, so no infringement of copyright. We also look at insight from research that explored the impact of remote schooling on parents. Research compiled by the Centre for Social Justice, a highly regarded and influential organisation that was behind such legislation as the Modern Slavery and Trafficking Act 2015, published within their recent report that launched a national campaign calling for all primary schools to have a strategy for the delivery of parental participation, an approach that sees the need for a broader understanding of the way schools work with parents and families. Drawing upon decades of academic research from around the world, parental participation recognizes and enables the administrative functionality that provides greater efficiency for schools and parents, whilst enabling all parents, regardless of their background, to support their children's learning. The CSJ's recently launched national campaign for this strategy is already gaining momentum. And there'll be information about an approach that has been successfully used across a wide range of schools for more than 6 years. The approach was designed by education professionals with decades of working practice as teachers and school leaders, who were able to blend their insights together with those from well-established academic research to create meaningful, manageable, and sustainable practice. This approach was recently validated by independent academic research as part of the DFE EdTech Innovation Initiative, and further endorsed through the academic peer review process. It is now providing the means to actually enable Geoffrey Keyes' aim for schools, families, and politicians to work together more effectively, efficiently, and harmoniously for the benefit of all children, regardless of their backgrounds. So where have all the children gone? At a time when the ingenuity of school leaders is being stretched to the maximum in an attempt to reduce the number of persistently absent and severely absent pupils, colleagues are always grateful for news of actionable insights, methodologies, and approaches that are already working in schools similar to their own. I've been amazed at the variety and number of approaches school leaders are using to improve attendance. I'm also aware of the levels of stress and what I would describe as misplaced guilt that many school leaders are experiencing, especially when they feel that despite their efforts, they can never do enough. However, schools cannot solve this issue in isolation. The recent news about the creation of more attendance hubs, where successful strategies used to improve attendance can be accessed by other school leaders, is timely and will be widely welcomed. If one point has been made absolutely clear since schools opened for the current academic year, it is the importance of parental participation in seeking a return to pre-pandemic pupil attendance figures. The figures quoted in the post so far that introduces this article shows that across the board, something has changed, and the often delicate balance that exists between school and home. To ignore this in seeking to provide a solution risks an investment in what will only be a short-term answer. In the search for long-term strategies that resolve the attendance issue, I mentioned 3 recent LinkedIn posts, some sharing national press articles. In his School Week article, which Geoffrey Key has written, Geoffrey makes an important point. He says, the aim must not be to blame schools or families or politicians, but together to bring these children out of COVID's long shadow. I love the use of the word together. Too often it can seem that the main stakeholders in children's education are pulling in different directions. Stakeholder groups need to work together to each other's strengths, and this is what parental participation strategy will provide. This desire is reflected in the Guardian article by Professor Lee Elliott Major, who's Professor of Social Mobility at the University of Exeter and the former CEO of the Sutton Trust. Here he speaks about the confusion that parents face in the complexity of roles that they're asked and expected to play in support of their children's schooling. Professor Elliott Major also provided the foreword for Cracks in Our Foundations, the report published by the Centre for Social Justice to launch their national campaign, calling for all primary schools to have a policy and strategy to enable parental participation. His foreword concludes, there are many other sensible proposals in this report, including those aiming to attract and develop teachers. But for me, the National Parental Participation Strategy would be a potential game changer. The government can publish all its ambitious targets for maths and English it likes, but failing to embrace this core education truth will mean they turn into unfulfilled dreams, condemning hundreds of thousands of pupils to leave school lacking the foundational skills needed to get on in life. It's time for us to take a bold step and embrace the power of parent participation in education. At present, the nature of school leadership is such that heads and members of SLT are swamped by many demands they face. If this article achieves nothing else, I hope that the research evidence it provides will serve to reassure school leaders that there should be no element of blame that can be justifiably attached to their actions for what is a totally unexpected consequence associated with COVID-19 lockdowns. So what normally counts as normal? Political slogans have got a lot to answer for. The new normal is a case in point. It described the changes we had to face to the way we lived our lives when entering a new world reality that included mask wearing, social distancing, enforced social isolation, protecting the vulnerable from infection, remote schooling, external examination grades awarded on teacher assessment rather than external examinations, and working from home. The new normal also seemed to generate an understanding of some of the most vital roles in our societies are being delivered by people with the lowest education qualifications and some of the lowest paid jobs. We realized that without these key workers, shop workers, refuse collectors, nurses, teachers, hospital cleaners, social care workers, doctors, we couldn't eat. We couldn't actually adequately be cared for, and our health would be at greater risk. On a daily basis, key workers place themselves in situations where they risked infection, and possibly death through close contact with strangers. We even set time aside to applaud. It now seems that the new normal was actually a temporary normal, because to all intents and purposes, we seem to have gone back to an expectation that we are once again in the old normal, i.e. the pre-pandemic normal. But are we? The Office of National Statistics reported in February 2003 that 40% of office workers were still working from home at some stage during the working week. This is the hybrid working that 85% of office workers in a previous ONS survey had said they would prefer. 78% of those working from home also said that it improved their work-life balance, and 47% said that it improved their well-being. But hospital cleaners, porters, nurses, care workers, and supermarket staff can't really work from home. According to the latest UK government figures, in the 7 days ending 3rd of March 2023, there were 473 deaths that mentioned COVID on the death certificate. COVID and its negative impact is still a reality. It is causing bereavement, anxiety, and for the health of relatives who need to be shielded, it is exacerbating mental health problems for all age groups. The National Children's Commissioner's analysis of the NHS data published last year shows that of the 1.4 million children estimated to have a mental health disorder, just 48% have received one contact with mental health services, and 34% received at least two. We know that the COVID-19 death rates and the instance of persistently absent and severely absent pupils is more prevalent in disadvantaged communities, where we already know that overcrowded living conditions, poor diet, and limited lifestyle choices reduce life expectancy for all, making the effective shielding of vulnerable family members difficult. What do we expect families to do? Above all, the feeling of grief is no less sharp in disadvantaged communities than it is for any other section of our community. Perhaps we need to stand back a little before reaching conclusions about the reasons that underpin pupil absence. For many, the healing process is still ongoing. We cannot forget that more than 2 years, the experiences of COVID-19 dominated news bulletins and the way we dictated and lived our lives. Life is not the same as it was in the pre-COVID world. We may be in a new normal, but it certainly isn't the pre-pandemic normal. It is here that I recommend the first piece of research that I mentioned at the start of this article. It was published in the British Medical Journal as a call for evidence for the National COVID Inquiry, and as such, school leaders may well have missed it. Although available for free download at the time I saw it, and with a declaration to that effect at the end of the BMJ publication, by the way, it is still subject to copyright. I found this work accidentally, but I found it absolutely riveting. It's compelling, and when you read it, it approaches the question about the impact of COVID-19 on children and schools from a medical perspective. Given the levels of stress within the teaching profession and young people, and the scale of impact this has on well-being, this is an article that all in the teaching profession should be aware of. I can't recommend it strongly enough. None of the information I've presented thus far, or in the following articles, has been taken from this research, making sure that copyright is not breached. However, you may read it freely. The research is called COVID-19 in the UK, Policy on Children and Schools. You'll find the article quoted in my LinkedIn article and a link to get to it from there. I look forward to seeing you and meeting you in the next installment.